Patricia.
Hi, Patricia. Hi, Rachel. Good to see you here. Oh, that will be lovely.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are MBS Academy. Our mission is to bring digital technology close to all professionals. We teach business professionals how to use digital technologies and manage digital risks to be familiar and comfortable with them. Some of our programs include Foundations of Digital Transformation, Artificial Intelligence, Auditing Digital Risk, Big Data Analytics, to name a few. I'm Tony, and I'll be your co-host for today. There are a few members of our team with us. Jessa.
Hi everyone, I am Jessa from Manila, Philippines, and I'm the producer of the online sessions.
Bethany.
Hi everyone, I'm Medini from Malaysia, and I'll be in charge of your polls for today.
And Ivan.
Hello guys, my name is Ivan. I'm from the Netherlands and would have a pleasure to have a nice discussion with you.
Thank you, folks. In this session, we'll be talking about data analytics in risk control and audit. And our speaker for today is Mario Buzilov. Mario is a certified information systems auditor and fellow of the Financial Services Institute of Australasia. He's been working in data analytics since 1994 and in risk and audit since 1999. In that, he has managed the implementation of a number of continuous monitoring systems and data analytics projects. Now, before to start, I would like to remind that we can see you, your cameras are on. So keep in mind. And Mario, please take it forward.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Welcome everyone to the session. It's great to see you all here. We've been running these sessions for a couple of months now, so we're getting quite a bit of interest in them. And actually, just talking about the topic from today, right now we're running an online version of the same on the same topic, course on the same topic, data analytics in risk control and audit, over 3 days. It seems to be working really well so far. So all of us right now here on the data analytics in audit wavelength, so to speak. So let's kick off with tonight's session. So when we talk about data analytics, it's really important, I think, to just clear a few misconceptions and actually see what exactly is meant by data analytics, because there's quite a few people who are involved in various shapes or forms. There's quite a few opinions out there, and I just would like to clarify a few things. Now, if we take the definition from Wikipedia, data analytics is the process of inspecting, cleansing, and transforming and modeling data with the goal of discovering useful information and supporting decision-making. It's got multiple facets and approaches, and there is quite a few diverse techniques under a variety of names. But I think what is really important, what is the real key here, is support for decision-making. And I would like to take it a little bit further. Now, the person that you see here is Peter Drucker. He was one of the top management consultants of the 20th century. He died in the early 2000s. He was great. Actually, I really love his works. And he said something really interesting, talking about technology from a purely business perspective. he said the purpose of information is not knowledge. The purpose of information is being able to take the right action. And this is where we are with data analytics. Now, data analytics, excuse me, is supposed to support the business. It's not just an end in itself. And that's why it's really important when talking and considering data analytics to have people from the business units to be involved. Now, I've spoken to a few organizations up until late last year. I was traveling extensively around PNG, Southeast Asia, and the Gulf countries. And I've spoken to a few people, and actually every single time when the business has taken a step back, the data analytics exercise or project didn't go well. So it's really important to keep in mind it's about business outcomes, it's not a technical one. And we'll be talking about that shortly. So it is about business. So if we talk about data analytics in audit and risk, it is about actually supporting the audit activities or the risk management activities of an organization. So have a look what the auditors are doing and how we can actually incorporate data analytics in the audit process. We'll talk shortly about that. It is not a technical initiative, definitely not. Yes, it is based on technology, but it is not technical. It is actually the business that needs to drive it. And I remember I was talking to a student of mine in Malaysia, and he said to me something really interesting. He works for a very large organization, which is going to be familiar to over 80% of the people here in the room. And he said, we implemented a data analytics initiative. It was a big data initiative. He came to one of the big data courses, and they implemented a data lake. And he said, now the problem is that the business is not terribly keen on using it. And the organization is blaming us, and me in particular, for the project's failure, so to speak. Now, they spent over $1 million actually putting this thing in place. They had consultants from a vendor. They also internally, they put some resources. And he said, but the problem is that the business doesn't want to use it. And I'm an IT person. I'm a project manager within the IS function. My job is to actually build this thing, to deliver it, and then to maintain it and support it. My job is not to use it because I've got no idea what the business questions are. And this is a really important insight. Actually, that conversation was happening about 2 years ago. I thought, yep, how true. The IS people or the IT people know how to actually keep the lights on, so to speak. Their job is to keep the systems running, to maintain them, to support them, to upgrade them, to protect them. Their job, however, is not to use them. So somebody in payroll or purchasing or on the banking side or in wholesale banking or in retail banking or in a university on the teaching side, they know what the business questions are. They are the prime users of the system. The IS people are just there to support them. Whatever applies to a system applies in exactly the same measure to to data analytics. So it's not a technical. Now, it is not also data analytics is not data science, big data, statistics, etc. It can be, but it's not just about that, because sometimes people think, oh, data analytics, they get scared. They think it's something complex. It will require a lot of learning, a lot of resources. That's definitely not the case. And actually tonight, I'll try to clear some of these misconceptions. Now, data analytics can be as simple or as complex as needed. I'm not saying that everything's very simple. However, there's a lot of simple things that can achieve a lot of business outcomes and provide a lot of benefits to the organization. And if you get a lot of simple things being used and achieving small benefits, cumulatively, the effect actually can be quite big. If you can shave half a day of each audit review that you are doing by using data analytics, and if you are doing, I don't know, I'll just pick a number, but let's say you are doing 20 audit reviews, usually the number is much higher, but let's say 20, and you've saved half a day of each, that means that you actually saved 10 man days, right? 20 audit reviews, half a day each, that's 20 man days. So now you actually have a time to do another audit review within the same budget. So small things can add a lot. Now, of course, some big savings, big results can be achieved. There is no question about that, but we shouldn't discount the small things as well. So it can be complex, or it can be simple, or it can be whatever is needed. Also we need to keep in mind that we shouldn't be trying to run before we can walk, all right? So we can start simple, and then over time we can build to more complex things. Now, it is an activity that 80% of professionals should be able to do. So 80% of auditors should be able to run something simple. When we run our data analytics courses, the full course, we have an activity where we actually show people some exercises using Excel. But using Excel, which is a tool that is available to every single organization on earth, I would say. And if you don't have Excel, you definitely can download the free, its free equivalent like OpenOffice. 80% of the professionals in a team should be able to do some simple things. And when you start doing that, even if you have a data analytics function, that's really important. If you have a data analytics function in your team, it's even more important to train everyone, or most of the people, to do data analytics, because simple tasks can be done by most people, and the complex tasks need to be given to the data analytics function. Otherwise, if the data analytics function is doing simple things, they are not actually living up to their potential. It is a wasted resource. I use an example with playing football. Most kids in school can play football, boys and girls. But then there are some who train a lot and they become the David Beckhams of the world. And the thing is that you don't want David Beckham to play in the local or in the city tournament. You want people like David Beckham to be playing in the World Cup tournaments. And this is the same with data analytics and data science. The data analytics function needs to be focused on the complex stuff, and everybody on the team will be doing some simple tasks. And of course, if they get stuck, they can always refer to the data analytics people, the experts, but they shouldn't, the experts shouldn't be doing it all the time instead of the others. Now, data analytics is part of standard audit reviews. This is something really important to consider. Now, there are exceptions to that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but overall, in most cases, over 80% of the organizations, data analytics should be part of standard audit reviews. We're talking here specifically about audit. You may also have heard about data analytics under the name of CATS, computer-assisted auditing techniques. CATS and data analytics are actually something which is the same. It is not just software. Really important. Again, we're not just talking about the technical aspect here. It is a process. So actually, we need to know, and we'll show you the process on the screen a little bit later. And actually, we have prepared a game for you in relation to that. So it's not just about the software; it's a process. It is also about the data sets. Now, I have been involved with data analytics in audit since 1994, and every single time, without any exceptions, the biggest problem is getting access to the data to be given to audit. For a number of reasons, usually these reasons are business, political, human, emotional, and whatever. They are never technical. I cannot remember actually. There is one that I can remember which was a technical, but we still managed to solve it. But a number of reasons, but sometimes we cannot get access to the data. And it's a very simple thing. If there is no data, there is no data analytics, right? So we need to keep that in mind. And only then we get to the tools. It can be things like IDEA, ACL. ACL is being discontinued. Now there is a replacement for ACL called Butters. Excel, Microsoft Access, which is a simple single user database, NIME, which is used for data analytics, machine learning, and a few more complex things, but it can be used for simple things as well. So it only then the tools come into play, but we need to focus on the process, we need to focus on the data, and only then we need to consider the tools themselves. Now, it's very important. Data analytics does not affect the audit objectives or scope. It can make the audit more efficient, but doesn't affect the objectives or the scope. And yes, to some extent, let me just rephrase that a little bit. It can affect the scope because if we actually save a little bit of time on the original scope, we have the opportunity to expand it if we need to, or we can actually use that saved time for another review, assign that to another review. Now, the benefits of data analytics increase the reliability of findings. Now, the thing is that if we actually using data analytics, we can take a data set and we can, instead of just sampling the data set, we can analyze the whole data set and find all of the exceptions. Our reliability, and if I'm writing an audit opinion, which I still do from time to time, I feel much more comfortable saying things are good or things are not so good, controls are operating at whatever level, if we actually had a look at the whole thing, as opposed to just essentially relying on sampling and doing some guesswork how the things are. Now, I know about the sampling, the mathematical foundations of sampling. I'm an engineer by background, so I'm familiar with the mathematical side of things, but no matter what, I would like to ask you the following question. If Boeing, the plane manufacturer, produces a batch of 100 planes and picks 2 of those as a sample and tests them extensively, and based on that sample concludes that the whole batch is okay to fly, and you are sitting in one of those planes on the tarmac just before takeoff, would you feel comfortable knowing that actually Boeing decided on the health of the whole batch by sampling? Or would you have wanted that Boeing would test every single plane to death in order to make sure that they can fly? This is the question. Sampling has got its applications, but it's not a panacea. Specifically in audit, I'm okay with sampling when we actually sample exceptions. So sampling exceptions is one thing, if there's too many and we cannot investigate them all. Sampling the full data set, I just don't believe in that. If we take, if in any in terms of specific organizational activities, it's different to draw parallels, because whatever a government organization does, whatever a bank does, whatever a university does, whatever a manufacturer does, are very different production activities. But they're the supporting activities in the value chain, like HR, finance, and IT, are relatively similar across the board. So if we have a payroll record, a data set with 500,000 records, and we sample 50, because physically it's not possible to investigate more than 50, now I'm not exactly going to be very comfortable. However, if we identify 500 exceptions in that 500,000 data set and we sample 5 of those, that's now a totally different proposition. So personally, I'm okay with sampling exceptions, and then I'm okay with the reliability of the findings. I'm not okay with sampling full data sets. But with data analytics, there's no need to sample the full data set. We can process the full data set. It reduces the time and costs. Now, if instead of sampling something which will take, let's say, 5 hours, we can run some data analytics, and that will take 1 hour, we've saved some time. And as a result, and consequently, we save some cost. Now, what do we need? Where we can apply data analytics in risk control and audit? Suitable processes, we need highly automated data-rich processes. And just yesterday, I was having a conversation, or was it on Tuesday? I was having a conversation with Metany from our team, which we were developing some games for the full course. And we were looking, and Metany said, okay, just give me some wrong answers to that question, which are suitable processes. And actually, I started thinking it wasn't very easy to get the wrong answer. Most processes, pretty much every single process in an organization that I could think of, is suitable for data analytics because data is there. There are some which are not as easy, like we were talking about employee well-being. So for this one, actually, you need to send questionnaires to employees, get them back, and then process them using data analytics. But most processes in an organization are actually suitable. However, some are easier than others. So the highly automated data-rich processes, banking transactions, ATM transactions, credit card, credit applications, payroll, procurement, monthly processes in finance. These are data-rich. Everything sits in a system. These are actually quite good in order to be used where data analytics can be used. Some examples, payroll, prime one, and it is a fairly high risk as well. Purchasing, another one. Most of the expenditure in an organization, actually probably over 80–90% of the expenditure in an organization comes from these two items when you look at the profit and loss statement. Revenue is another one, depending on various sources of revenue, but most organizations now actually have the revenue in an electronic form. Even if it's cash, there's a transaction at the till. So again, we have an electronic record, and it's a suitable one. Sales, another one. Sales are all booked into a system. They sit in the CRM or potentially in a number of other systems. So they're suitable. A number of other processes. The sky is the limit pretty much. You just need to apply a little bit of lateral thinking and more imagination. And data analytics can be available for not everything, but quite a few processes are there. So just a quick poll. Over to you, Methany.
Hi everyone, we're going to have a small poll. You should see it pop up on your screen. If you don't see it, please let us know. All right, thank you for participating. You should be able to see the results pop up now. Back to you, Mario.
Okay, thanks a lot, Methany. So, overview. So we'll cover tonight the standard data analytics in risk control and audit. And a quick overview. It's an ad hoc or semi-automated process. So this is not something that you on a regular basis. You can include it in some reviews. You don't do it very often. You definitely include it in the ad hoc reviews, which pop up in any audit plan across the organizations. It is based on relatively widespread and well-known software. It can be spreadsheets, it can be IDEA or Butters. Data sets are mostly with simple structures. Just a single data set, it can have like 20, 30 columns, a few thousand records. Now, having said that, we still can do a lot because Excel now allows up to 1 million records in a single spreadsheet. So we can achieve quite a bit. 1 million records actually is quite a lot. 1 million records would allow you to have every single payroll transaction for an organization with about 5,000 employees for a full year. So data sets not very large. Having said that, still we can do a lot. As I said, like even in Excel, we can get to 1 million and have the full payroll. Now, I know that some of the other software like IDEA or Butters are saying we can process more than 1 million records, and I'm pretty sure that they can. The question is how quickly. So beyond a certain size, these things are starting to show some cracks. So personally, I would go away and I'll move to something else, like a database. The benefits, it's got a very quick design and implementation time. Now, when you have people which are familiar with Excel, and that there's quite a few of those in an organization, or when you have people that have been trained in IDEA or ACL, not as many as the Excel people, but still there's a few experts in each audit team, they can quickly put something together and can implement it. Now, when we talk about more advanced concepts like databases or business intelligence, things are starting to get a little bit more difficult and a little bit slower. The cost is lower. So, okay, so quick design, quick implementation time. There is no cost for licenses or additional expertise. So overall, the cost is pretty much negligible. They are suitable for quick and dirty tests. So if we have an idea and we want to test something, we can actually just use standard data analytics. We don't need to put any infrastructure in place. We can quickly get a data set from IS. If you have friends in IS, that always helps. One of the things that I do, no matter if when I was working full-time for a period of time in an organization, I always would go and actually introduce myself to the IS people, and I'll have coffee with them quite often, because basically this way, whenever you need a favor from them, like a data set, it's much easier to get it. So my suggestion would be go and make a few friends in IS, have a few coffees with them, and then you'll be able to get the data quickly. So actually, when we have standard data analytics, we can quickly get a data set and do something, or run some hypotheses. Okay, we're thinking that there is a risk here that we want to monitor, to quickly identify, is there a risk really or not? Or one of the senior managers from one of the business units in the organizations came to it and said, oh, by the way, we would like you to have a look at something here. Data analytics, standard data analytics is actually quite suitable for that. Drawbacks, okay, well, there's no way around it. We cannot do too many complex things in Excel. For those of you who are coming from an accounting background, you probably have heard about three-way match. For those of you who are not accountants, just quickly, a three-way match is when you have a purchase order which needs to match an invoice that was sent to us by a vendor, and that also needs to match the delivery docket, which is issued when we receive the goods from the vendor. So for example, if we have ordered 10 computers at $1,000 each, that's on the purchase order, which we sent to the vendor. The vendor sent us an invoice for $10,000, 10 computers by 1,000. So the invoice is for $10,000. The invoice is not for 12,000 or 11,000 or anything like that. And when we receive the computers, the delivery docket for those, the receipt for these computers says that there are 10 computers with the parameters that have been specified in the purchase order. So we are matching. So whatever has been ordered, purchase order, this is what we are paying for, the amount we are paying for in the invoice, and this is what we are getting, the delivery docket. Difficult to do something like that in Excel. And then when you then you can just throw in a false data set, which is the vendor master file, just to see who is providing the goods. Not very easy. So we need to stick to simpler things. But we can identify vendors with unusual payment periods, because we can pull every single vendor. We can pull the payment periods which are relevant to that vendor, and we can quickly analyze if, like, okay, 15, 30, 45 days are relatively standard, but when you see vendors with 5 days or vendors with 95 days, these are exceptions that need to be investigated. Maybe a system error, maybe something else, number of reasons, but This can be done using simple data and simple analytics. Data sets are smaller. Well, again, there is no way around it. There is only so many records you can reasonably well fit into Excel, or there's a theoretical maximum as well. As I said, IDEA, ACL, Albertus, all of these pieces of software are having a little bit of difficulty processing records beyond a certain size. But never having said that, probably 70% of the audit tests can be done quite well using Excel or ACL if you have ACL licenses or IDEA licenses. Another quick poll, Metheny?
All right, we're going to have another poll. You should see it pop up on your screen now. All right, thank you for participating. I will share the results on your screen. Back to you, Mario.
Okay, thanks a lot, Metheny. So what is the process? This is something that I've been using and we've been using in our company for quite a few years now. I developed it because I wanted to have a little bit more structured and uniform approach to data analytics whenever we went and did some audit engagements with different clients. And it was also allowed me much more easily to train the people who are doing the reviews together with me, because sometimes we'll just get external people, contractors to help us. So not everybody was familiar and not everybody was working on the same model. So step number one, most important one, examine the terms of reference. Now, as I said, data analytics is about business. And the business side of things in audit is the terms of reference for each one of the reviews. So step number one, examine the terms of reference, see what the review objectives are, what is the scope, what we'll be looking at a little bit more specifically. And based on the terms of reference, identify the potential audit tests where we can apply data analytics. Okay, so a potential audit test that can be automated. Now, after we've done that, we need to identify the available data sets. Okay, can we get the data set that we need in order to do this specific audit test from the system within a reasonable time frame? Because if we cannot, then the only option is just to go and sample a few records using the front end of the system. But if we can actually get a reasonable data set, then we can do some data analytics. One thing that I would like to mention is people quite often get kind of hung up on the data set size. or the period of time that we want to be investigating. Now, the amount of time you're going to spend developing an audit test or data analytics for an audit test for 6 months period and for 2 years period is exactly the same. There is no difference whatsoever. Because you are developing the test using just 5 or 6 records. So it doesn't matter once you've developed the audit test and the analytics, whether you will be actually running it over 3 months, 6 months, or 2 years. So my advice to you would be, if you think that in order to get the full picture, you need to run the analytics over 3 years, just ask for 3 years. Don't think, and by the way, from a purely IT perspective, and I used to work as a database administrator. That was part of my functions when I was developing some continuous auditing systems and maintaining them. In my first job, I was working for the government for 11 years here in Australia. Now, from a purely IT perspective, it's much easier for a database administrator to give you the full data set as opposed to just a slice of it. It's more effort. So dumping the whole data set and sending it to audit is much easier than actually extracting the previous quarter or the last 3 months, things like that. Don't do it. So make the life easier for us and also make your lives easier by actually getting something which is meaningful. Because for some things, for example, and we've done a few sessions on fraud here, the thing is that fraud, for example, is not an event. Fraud is something that is happening over time. So fraud doesn't happen at a point in time. And I've shown some examples here where there were some cases in Queensland, where I live, one of the states in Australia. Like there was a guy who stole $20 million over the period of 13 years. So you cannot analyze 2 years. You actually want to have a look at the full data set if you're looking for some inappropriate conduct. All right. There was another guy more recently. This one stole $15–16 million. It was Queensland Health. If you Google Tahitian Prince, Queensland Health, that will be the first result that would come up. And he did it again over 5 or 6 years. So just getting the last quarter or the last 6 months doesn't give the full picture. So get as much data as possible, but identify what data is available, right? Discuss the access mechanism with IS. And here, my advice would be, don't tell them what you want and how you want it. Ask IS how they can give it to you. Make their life easier, because apart from providing data sets to audit for data analytics, they have a lot of other tasks to do. So make it, whatever they offer to give you, just take it. Once you have it on the audit side, you can pre-process it, you can convert it in, do whatever you want with it, but you've got it, because getting it, as I said, is one of the biggest problems. So take it and then fix it on your side. But when you go and discuss it, my always, when I go, because access mechanism is actually a negotiation in most cases. People have their jobs, you go there and you go to them and say, I want the data set. Yes, okay, but we are not going to be able to give it to you tomorrow. You may need to wait 3 weeks' time. Maybe 3 weeks is too long, in which case the negotiation starts. Okay, well, okay, not tomorrow. I didn't mean tomorrow, but can you give it to me in 3 days? No, we cannot give it to you in 3 days. You need to wait for 3 weeks. So when things get into that, and I've heard also a few arguments, we are audit, we should take it. I don't personally want to go there. Getting data is an exercise in diplomacy. When you say we are audit, we should get it, I can tell you that over 50% of the people on the other side will say, yep, okay, you audit, you should get it. And by the way, I have a list of tasks here, 27, let's say, at last count. Yours will be 28. And if you want to argue what's more important, data analytics for an audit review or the system upgrade of the payroll system, go and speak to the CFO or the chief HR officer. And these are not conversations that we want to get into. So ask us what is easy for them. Quite often, there will be, in most cases, they have been really accommodating with me. I had a few not so pleasant exchanges, but overall, it was good. And they say, yeah, okay, listen, we cannot give it what you're asking in the format, but if we can give you this, would you be happy? I'm thinking, oh, whatever you give me, I'm going to be extremely happy. Just give it to me so that we can move on. So ask them. Now, the next thing, you identify what is available expertise within audit. If you intend to use ACL, do you have people who are trained in ACL? And more importantly, would they be available for you on this review, because they're probably already busy with other things that they are doing. So what's available at this point in time? That also will influence your decisions. Select the tool based, okay, so now you know what's available. So if the ACL or IDEA person is available, grab them. If they are not available, get the Excel expert, whatever the case might be. So in this case, we'll be using Excel. Review the list of potential auditors. So you did a list initially in the second step, but now you have to review, okay? Based on the data, based on what we can get from us, based on the tools that we'll be using, what is possible. Quite often, the list can stay the same, but sometimes you may need to remove a couple of things simply because they cannot be done. No data, no expertise, so on. Perform the required analysis, examine the output, what are we getting as a result of the data analytics, and then incorporate the results and the findings in the audit report. They support, remember, they don't change the objectives or the scope of the review, so they just support whatever you're doing. You have identified some new things. There are certain findings that popped up as a result of data analytics. Great. They'll be incorporated in the audit report. This is the process that I personally like to use. This is the process that I would give to other auditors who come to work with me for specific audit engagement. Makes it easy for everyone, as opposed to reinventing the wheel every time. Here's the process. Let's just follow it and see how we're going to finish the review. Some examples of standard data analytics: accounts payable, invoice quantity variance, very easy to do. This is part of three-way match. Segregation of duties, payments and vendor maintenance, big risk. We want to make sure that the person who can perform these two functions is a different person. There is no time to go here, but there is a potential fraud called account flipping, where people can change accounts, can get the money into that account, which was destined for a vendor, and then flip it back to the original one. Duplicate sales invoices, again, very easy to have a look at the total population of invoices over the last 12 months, or over the last 2 years, and actually see if there are any duplicates. In payroll, we can have a look at things like excessive accumulated leave. In Australia, for example, you're not supposed to accumulate more than 2 years of annual leave, which is 8 weeks in most cases. So if you have people with more than 8 weeks of accumulated leave, the question, if it's like, 8 weeks and 2 days, well, not exactly the end of the world. But if you have consistently in certain teams, people with 10 weeks leave or 12 weeks leave, that's something that needs to be brought to the attention of HR and the actual team leaders. Quick activity. We're now going to split into breakout rooms. Sorry, no, we're not actually splitting in the breakout rooms. Just use this link and play the MBS analytics game, where you need to put the standard data analytics steps in the process in order. So let's have a play. Any questions? Is everybody getting the link to work? Okay. Okay, so which character did you select? Okay, I'll go with the Hulk. Let's see whether you can get them right. How did we go? How are we going? For those of you who are still. Okay, the link will be available. We'll continue with the presentation. I hope you got them right already, but if not, you can keep trying and you'll get the presentation after the session as well. So in the remaining 10 minutes, I'll just like to cover some of the things about in advanced data analytics. When we talk about data and advanced data analytics, we're talking about using databases. So we're moving beyond Excel. The things which are the benefits are, number one, now becomes a central audit repository. So we can actually get data from many systems into a single place in audit. Now, that allows us to do things like simple tests like employee and vendor bank account matches, which in most organizations are close to impossible. Simply because you need to get two different data sets and analyze them in audit. Now you can do it once, but doing it on a regular basis, unless you have some sort of a process, it's quite difficult. But here, we can do it. We can automate the transfers. Again, really important, simply because when you have automated transfers, that means that you don't need to go and task IS people for data all the time. You set up the transfer, you test it, you agree on whatever is going to be transferred, and it just happens then. It just happens every week or every month or whatever the required period is. So now you have data on tap all the time. You can run actually some of these analyses quite regularly, every quarter or every 6 months, if you consider that the risks are high. You can now perform much more complex tasks. Once you have everything in a database, going back to the example of a three-way match, comparing and doing analysis like that becomes much easier. This is what databases are designed for. They're designed to provide to answer complex business questions, and to have it on tap, because in the advanced data analytics we're using an underlying database. It is available. It's not that Audit is making it. It's Audit is making use of a database that has been deployed specifically for audit purposes by the IS department. A quick poll in relation to data analytics.
All right, you should see a poll pop up on your screen. If you don't, please let us know. Okay, thank you for participating. You will see the results on your screen now.
Thanks, Methany.
Well,
So some of the benefits of advanced data analytics, you can use the single data repository in multiple audit engagements. So if you do a review of one of your revenue systems, like let's say wholesale banking system, and you can keep getting transactions or data from that system, and you can just do another review 6 months later, which is part of your audit plan, using the same data set. So now the single repository is used across multiple reviews. If you're doing a review of payroll, same thing. You may look at one aspect of payroll, then another aspect of payroll. I remember we implemented a continuous monitoring system for department, for university here in Australia. And they said, we want to have a look at procurement, and then next we want to have a look, and then we want to do an implementation, and we want to have a review of the credit card spend. I said, well, what's the difference between the two? Once you get the data, you just put it in there, and you can do the review of procurement first. You can do the review of the credit cards later, but it's in the same place. So we don't need to do anything more. You have it, we've done it. You can just keep using this thing across multiple reviews as needed. Data sets can be really large. Now we're talking here about some huge amounts of information. The thing is that once you transfer the information initially once, you just keep adding the new records that are being generated. To give you an example, one of the implementations of advanced data analytics that we did contained 150 million payroll records. Every single record since inception of the system. That system was implemented in 1996. So we initially did a transfer of that, and then for every payroll period, they were generating about, I think, 40 or 50,000 records. We just keep adding the 40 or 50,000 records for every pay period. But the initial 150 million was already there. But we're talking some large data sets here. And Audit was able to actually run quarterly reviews and quarterly analytics across a number of processes. Payroll was one of them, but there were the revenue, there were some others. Data sets are diverse. Now we're actually breaking the silos here, because we can get data sets from finance, we can get data sets from payroll, we can get data sets from sales and marketing. We can bring them together. Now, before that, of course, if you have a really good business or business intelligence or data warehouse system that should be available there, although the focus is slightly different, so some of the things that you need won't be there, but at least you can get some of the stuff. But generally speaking, unless there's a corporate-wide BI or data warehouse initiative, these things are really difficult to do. Drawbacks, lead times are longer. We're talking here about more complex pieces of software that need to be developed, so this is a fact of life. Now, a quick example, something that we did, review of inventory management. So we analyzed full 2 years of data. What we did, we used Oracle database to just bring all of the data together. We imported data from a number of systems, financial, inventory, HR. Pre-processed and linked the datasets because some of the identifiers are different across different systems. You've probably encountered that. So we had to do some pre-processing and mapping to link the datasets. Some of the analysis that we did, inventory turnover, transactions by transactions type, it was like issues of items from the inventory, returns, receipts of items when they were delivered from the vendors. These were that type of thing, excessive usage of certain stock items. There were about 35 different analyses that we did. These are just a sample of them to give you a flavor what can be done. But once you have the advanced data analytics, now things are much easier to do. Advanced plus data analytics. Now, this is when we are talking about some more complex concepts. This is when we already have the data repository. And on top of that, we put business intelligence. Now, business intelligence allows people to explore the data sets, ask business questions without actually having any technical expertise, because if you want to ask a business question from a database, you need to know something like SQL, which is the database language. With business intelligence, these are business user-oriented tools. So you don't need to have any technical knowledge. Basically, everything is click and drag and drop. So with that, we can do some additional stuff. And that brings us to the concept of continuous assurance, because we actually now can have continuous auditing. These are the analytics done by auditors, but we also can have continuous monitoring, because when we use business intelligence, which is a multi-user tool, we can actually give access to some of the business areas. So like, for example, again, I'll use procurement, and we've done that in the past with our implementations that we've done of continuous auditing. We actually got we got access to people in procurement. Now audit, because audit was driving the whole project, they had access to everything. They had access to payroll, to finance, to procurement. However, we also did give access, small access, specific access to the area. So the procurement people could see the audit reports that have been developed in relation to procurement. So these reports were used by audit, but also were used by procurement people. Now, remember the 3 lines of defense. The first line of defense is the business. So once we give access to the business, we're talking about something totally different here, because the people in the business can actually start doing the monitoring themselves. Audit doesn't need to do it. Audit now just does the overseeing role and may focus on some new emerging risks, but the main risks are covered by the business. I remember we did another implementation. The payroll manager said, this is great. These are the things that I always was asking for, because actually I want to catch some of these problems when they start, not when they've become such a big problem that actually now I need to alert the HR director and a number of other people. Well, if you catch it early and we fix it, sometimes these problems are unintentional. It's not always fraud or anything like that, but maybe there's a tweak which is needed in the process. If we do that, let's just monitor them, catch them. So now we're talking about real continuous assurance. And for that, we need the advanced plus, what we call data analytics in RCA. And you can now start applying artificial intelligence. This is not actually what we teach in one of our courses, in the data analytics course. But once we have all of that data in a single place, we now can start looking at some more complex things. Of course, as I said, we need to walk before we start running, and artificial intelligence goes somewhere at the Olympic level, like Usain Bolt, the runner, but nevertheless, it's possible. And it's sitting under the control of audit. This is the main thing. It's sitting under the control. So just quickly, data analytics, my advice would be start small and keep building it from that point onwards. It's not that complex. There are complex things, there are easy things, but it is achievable for across the majority of the audit team. So thanks a lot for being here. Final poll, over to you, Metany.
All right, thanks for joining us. Please let us know what you thought.
And
Wait,
the session
sorry.
has got a few more minutes. Oh, sorry. So please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. We're happy to answer. Also, our contacts on the screen now. So feel free to send us an email or to connect with us on LinkedIn. We do run a few of those sessions. But thanks a lot from me, and Tony, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you for making time to join us today. Hope you enjoyed. See you tomorrow next Thursday, when we'll be talking about data analytics in fraud detection and prevention. In this session, we will consider the potential fraud indicators that can be discovered using data analytics. Finally, we will examine how data analytics can help with fraud prevention. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter for more information about events and digital technology and digital risk insights. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the kind words. This is what makes it worth for all of us here at MBS Academy, and we look forward to seeing you soon in one of our other sessions.